You set an alarm last night. You dragged yourself out of bed this morning. You ate something fast, grabbed your bag, and rushed out the door. And somewhere between the commute and the inbox and the coffee that went cold, you thought, there has to be a better way to live. But here is the strange thing. There was a better way. For most of human existence, your ancestors had already found it. And the life they were living would shock you. Not because it was brutal, not because it was short or desperate or full of suffering, but because it looked, in many ways, like something you would pay a lot of money for today. Anthropologist Marshall Salins called hunter-gatherers the original affluent society. Not because they had abundance in the way we think of it, but because they had something rarer. They had enough. And they had time. The average forager, based on studies of modern hunter-gatherer groups observed across the 20th century, worked between 3 and 5 hours a day to secure food, water, shelter, and everything else they needed to survive. 3 to 5 hours. The rest was theirs. So what did they do with it? Researchers like Richard Borsche Lee spent years living alongside the Kung San people of the Kalahari Desert in southern Africa, documenting their daily lives in extraordinary detail. What he found overturned almost everything that had been assumed about prehistoric existence. The Kung were not scrambling. They were not desperate. They gathered mongongo nuts, hunted when they felt like it, and spent enormous stretches of time doing almost nothing that modern productivity culture would recognize as useful. They talked, they played, they slept during the hottest part of the day. They groomed each other. They told stories around fires that burned long after the sun had gone down. This was not laziness. This was the design. Your brain was built in that world. Your body was shaped by it. The rhythms your nervous system expects, the pace your mind is calibrated for, the depth of rest your biology requires, all of it was tuned over hundreds of thousands of years to a life that looked nothing like the one you are living. Think about how your ancestors actually spent a typical day. They woke with the light. Not an alarm, not an obligation, but the slow brightening of a sky they could see because they slept in the open or beneath a thin shelter. There was no sharp division between sleep and wakefulness. Historian Roger Ekirch, whose research on pre-industrial sleep patterns revealed that humans naturally slept in two separate chunks, suggests that the consolidated 8-hour block we now chase is itself a modern invention. Your ancestor woke in the middle of the night, lay quietly, maybe talked to whoever was nearby, and drifted back to sleep. The night was not something to be conquered. It was just part of the day. Morning was for movement, not exercise, not in the way you think of it, not something scheduled and deliberate and measured in miles or minutes. Just walking. Foragers covered between 6 and 12 miles a day on average, but spread across hours, at a pace that allowed them to notice everything. They were not walking to get somewhere. They were walking as a way of being in the world. The landscape was not scenery. It was information. Every track, every bent branch, every change in the smell of the air was data that kept them alive. Your ancestors were reading the world the way you read a screen. Constantly, fluidly, with a depth of attention that researchers now believe was one of the most cognitively demanding activities a human being can perform. Primatologist and anthropologist Robin Dunbar, whose work on social group sizes and the evolution of language has reshaped how we understand the human mind, argues that gossip, not tool use, not hunting, was the primary driver of language development. Your ancestors talked about each other. They tracked social relationships with the same precision they tracked animal migrations. They knew who owed whom a favor. They remembered who had been generous and who had not. They negotiated status and alliance and trust through conversation, and they did it for hours every single day. This was not idle chatter. This was survival infrastructure. After the morning movement, the midday heat was a time to stop, to find shade, to doze. This is not laziness encoded by culture. This is biology. Your cortisol levels naturally drop in the early afternoon. Your core body temperature rises slightly. Every signal your nervous system sends is pointing toward rest. The siesta that modern productivity culture treats as an indulgence was, for most of human history, simply what you did when your body told you to.
The afternoon might bring more gathering, more walking, more conversation. Children played in groups that no adult supervised closely. Play in early human societies was not structured or scheduled. It was long, open-ended, and often rough. Developmental psychologist Peter Gray has argued that the kind of free play that characterized childhood for most of human existence was the primary way children learned to negotiate, to manage risk, to handle failure, and to understand the social rules of their group. Not instruction, not curriculum, just play for hours every single day with a freedom that is almost unimaginable to a child growing up today. And then evening came. The fire was everything, not just for warmth or cooking, but for what it made possible. Anthropologist Polly Wessner spent years studying the campfire conversations of the Juhonzi people in Botswana, recording and analyzing thousands of hours of talk across different times of day. What she found was striking. Daytime conversation was practical. It was about food, about logistics, about the mundane coordination of daily life. But nighttime conversation, firelit conversation, was something else entirely. At the fire, people told stories. Not stories about what happened today. Stories about distant places and people who were not there. Stories about the spirit world, about the time before, about the great hunts and the strange dreams and the ancestor who once did something remarkable. Around the fire, abstract thought ignited. The imagination stretched. And according to Wiesner, this is where the uniquely human capacity for extended social networks, for cooperation with people you have never met, for shared belief and collective identity, was born and continuously renewed. You are a story animal, not metaphorically, neurologically. The same circuits that process the narratives your ancestors told around fires are the ones that light up when you watch a film, read a novel, or scroll through someone else's life on a screen at midnight. The hunger has not changed, only the fire has. Your ancestors slept earlier than you do, but not as soon as the fire died. The night was social. The stars were known by name and used for navigation, for timing, for myth. The darkness was full of presence, full of sound, full of meaning that the group had collectively built over generations. Here is what is worth sitting with. The life your brain was built for was slow by today's standards. It was local. It was repetitive in the best sense. The same seasonal rhythms cycling back year after year. The same faces, the same stories getting richer with each telling. It was physically demanding in a gentle, distributed way. It was socially dense in a way that most modern people never experience. You almost never did anything alone. Research by John Cacioppo, who dedicated his career to studying loneliness, found that chronic social isolation produces measurable physiological damage, the kind of damage comparable to smoking 15 cigarettes a day. Your body treats isolation as a threat because for most of your evolutionary history, being separated from your group meant death. The anxiety that creeps in when you have gone too long without real human contact is not weakness. It is your biology running the same subroutine it has been running for 200,000 years. And yet the structure of modern life makes isolation easy and connection hard. You eat alone. You work alone. You commute alone. You live in boxes stacked next to other boxes and never learn the name of the person on the other side of the wall. This is not a personal failure. This is a mismatch between the world your body expects and the world you actually inhabit. Your ancestors did not have more. They had less of almost everything that modern culture treats as a marker of success. But they had time. They had each other. They had the unhurried rhythm of a life lived at a human pace, which is to say, a slow one. And tomorrow morning, when the alarm pulls you out of sleep before your body is ready, when you gulp something down and rush out the door and sit in traffic and stare at a screen for hours and eat lunch in 12 minutes and collapse into bed too tired to think, some part of you will feel the mismatch. A faint, wordless sense that this is not quite right. That feeling is not anxiety. That feeling is not ingratitude. That feeling is 200,000 years of memory, still running in your nervous system, telling you that somewhere along the way, you left something behind.